I'm super excited to host Kintan Brahmbhatt here. This is, I think, second time here, right? He spoke here before COVID. We had a great talk back then. Back then, he was working at Amazon. He headed up Prime Music as well as Amazon Podcast. Now he's the CEO and co-founder of an exciting AI startup called Alto. And before that, he worked at Microsoft and he did another startup. That's his Twitter handle. And I'm super excited, and I've had a preview of this talk, so I'm really excited about it, for him to share his advice on battle-tested strategies for crafting Gen AI products. So with that, please help me in giving Kintan a warm welcome. Thanks, Kintan.
Thanks, Dan.
Yeah.
All right.
There you go.
Thank you.
Yep.
Am I mic'd up? Can you guys hear me? Awesome. All right. Kintan here, super excited to be here. I'm going to be walking around a lot. It's almost like a reunion. I know so many friends from Seattle and from here. And after COVID, now I'm meeting some of you after a couple of years. So thank you for coming. And thanks, Dan, again, for having me back. So I spent a ton of time in building products. Been fortunate to have built products and teams and launched global products at Amazon for over a dozen years or so, working on my second startup. Worked on machine learning for at least the last 10 years or so. Now it's called AI in the zeitgeist. A lot of the work we did was, I was building Amazon Music, which was one of the primary use cases for our smart speaker product, which was Alexa and Amazon Echo, where we did a lot of natural language processing, natural language understanding, the work around it. When you say Alexa, play music, no, it's a very complex deep learning that goes behind the scenes for Alexa to give you the right song at the right time for the right user and so on. Last year, I left Amazon, started a B2B startup called Alto. Earlier this year with a small team from Amazon, and a lot of that ML work has been on generative AI. I think the bulk of the work we did earlier was in predictive AI, lots of classifiers, making prediction engines for recommendations and such. Bulk of the work this year has been around generative AI, how to generate content, how to instill generative AI components within an existing UI and such. So Dan and I chatted earlier in the year. There was another event for product leaders called the Product Leaders Summit, where we tested some of these slides, and then we added a bunch more as well based on feedback there. So you're getting a revised edition with lots of new feedback points incorporated here. But I'm going to just really chat about things I've seen in generative AI, why generative AI is quite profound from a technology arc perspective, what I've seen firsthand, mistakes we've made as we're building out Alto from the grounds up, and hopefully some of it will resonate. Mileage may vary in these things. What worked for me in one use case may or may not apply to your use case. So just take that as one data point and triangulate it with other data points, as all great product folks do. I think this is super important because, as initially, when I was looking at a few ideas to build, we were looking at how deep in the stack do you want to go as far as building a ML startup is concerned or AI startup is concerned. And we had a few actual customer problems that we wanted to solve. We decided to work at the application layer, because our background is mainly in building products and such. I'm sharing this because majority of the audience here is from the product background. What I have observed is no matter how innovative the underlying foundation models are, they're all, whether they are by OpenAI or by Amazon or Llama, by Facebook, by Meta and such, or some other great open source models, they're accessible to everyone. So exceptional product leaders, as they tailor their product, to incorporate AI in the right way to solve the right problems, what differentiates great products from the rest is how they are using AI to build the right CX, to solve the right customer needs, to understand where the user needs are, understand the customer's existing patterns, and see where AI can help intersect and elevate the experience. So I genuinely believe that commoditization is the wrong word, but I think it is commoditization from a practical perspective, that most product folks will be able to access most of these very sophisticated models, and there'll be companies that are ahead in the game, whether it's the bigger companies like Microsoft and Amazon and Meta, or OpenAI and Anthropic and Mistral and others, and they'll continue to innovate on it. But bulk of the product work, bulk of the new customer experiences are going to come from companies people not building those foundation models, folks like us. So for that, it's going to be super important for us to really understand that it's not about just snapping a chatbot on top of an existing UI. It's much more complex, much more nuanced than that. And what that nuances are is what I try to understand first. Obviously, it's an evolving story, and it'll evolve even further. But today, my hope is to share some of those insights with some examples. And more than that, just have a dialogue. I'm sure many of you, I know some of you are already building really cool AI products. So I don't have a slide at the very end that says Q&A, even for folks on the Zoom. If you have a question, just either shout it out if you are here, or put it in the chat if you're on Zoom. And we have a good small group. I think there are 30, 40 folks on Zoom, and we have 50, 60 folks here. So it's a good group where we can actually have a dialogue, and I'll facilitate the dialogue. So please interrupt, is what I'm saying. This needs to be a two-way door. Product and CX is going to be a differentiator, because most folks will be able to access these LLMs. Again, talked about this. My objective is very simple. If there is just one insight, one new thing you learn from the next 45, 50 minutes, I think this is time well spent. And I'll make sure that happens. And if that doesn't happen at the end, you raise your hand and you come to me and tell me, and happy to dive deeper. So when we look at those nuances or those insights as to what really goes into building any product, not just Gen AI, not just ML products, it's really all about modalities and affordances. When you're building a micro interaction or interaction, or a UX, or just a broader suite of products. It's a collection of micro interactions and modalities. And that's what we'll talk about. Micro interactions are enabled by affordances. I'm speaking design speak here. Modalities, the most common ones right now are chatbots and task-specific assistants that I think that Microsoft has popularized, rightly so, as co-pilots. And we'll talk about what is a chatbot, what is a co-pilot, etc. Can I see a show of hands as to do these terms mean anything for you? RLHF versus RAG. All right, it's great. So these are terms. This is just to assess how deep technically should I go here versus not. This is just human feedback versus retrieval augmentation. So it's just a way of getting more feedback loops going and such. Let me go deeper into chat, and starting with the simplest UI that everyone has most likely seen. This is ChatGPT's UI, the basic components here, and then I'll talk about what are the new affordances that are taking shape. Obviously, the chat bot on the bottom, so there's a chat box, and the paper plane, which was initially popularized by WhatsApp and other messaging apps, now has found its way in the zeitgeist, the chat bot with when sending a message, because you are sending a message to the AI here. There is this notion of a guided browsing experience or guided queries that you'll see obviously in ChatGPT, but most other good, well-designed chat products. And then there's always what more can I do? There's upsell. Hey, you pay a little more, you get a faster model. You pay a little more, you get a more performance, a more accurate model, and so on. So this is a simplest way. There's a good chat, free-form chatbot or chat text box, followed by some guided queries for guided browse experience, followed by how can you sell more, upsell, cross-sell, etc. Another good example is this product by Intercom. Many of you may know Intercom is this, the chatbot you see on many landing pages of B2B apps. They have a customer support product they call Fin. The thing I like about this is the confluence of human and AI in the same interface. So they have the interface here, which is the same Fin bot interface on the bottom. They have a text box, they have messaging affordances, and then they have a chat. You can ask questions and such. But they also have a very good fallback to a human. So if AI is unable to solve a problem, can actually just quickly, seamlessly go to a human customer support agent and still solve the problem. And I think that's the power. It actually tells you when you've gone to a human in a very seamless manner. They are also experimenting with a very new pricing model where the pricing is not a SaaS-based pricing, but they are charging per incident resolved. So they're charging $1 per resolved incident, which is a very interesting way to price. It's an experiment, but I think it has some merit. Unlike most software, for the longest part, we've had very large margins, gross margins, because the cost to deliver additional marginal software product is not as high, versus in Gen AI, there is actual cost to deliver more queries, to deliver more results. So that's why I think they are trying a usage-based pricing there. And it's very nicely done UI where you can see, it'll tell the user, ask for feedback and gauge that feedback to understand whether to pass it on to the human or not, and from a human conversation, pass it back to the AI. Any questions on this? This is 101. Please go ahead. Yeah, Samir.
Ask maybe you can walk through we just need a microphone. Hold on, we need a handheld. Otherwise,
I can repeat it. Yeah.
No, yeah, we can just do it.
We have a microphone.
I was just gonna have you explain the pricing model and the handoff between the human and the chatbot. Yeah.
So the questions about pricing model, I think it's an open question. Pricing Gen AI products is an open question. Oftentimes, many Gen AI products, they promise proficiency and efficiency, allowing their customers to do more with less. Say, hey, this task required 10 people to do it. If you use AI, guess what? 5 people can do it, or 8 people can do it, and so on. If you are charging on a per seat license basis, then by definition, if your product is successful, your net NRR is going to go down next year. So folks are figuring out ways to incorporate value-based pricing, usage-based pricing, some platform fee, and on top of it, value-based pricing, and so on. Fin is one example I called out. There are a few others as well where there are interesting pricing models. But basically, the high order bit is to shift the focus from per seat to value-based pricing, if that makes sense. Any other questions? All right, let's go to co-pilots. Again, co-pilots are task-relevant assistants. A product many of you would have used, are aware of, is Notion. I think the beauty of Notion's co-pilot or Notion AI is that it's so intrinsically built in that customer doesn't really need to do anything new to discover it. They can just highlight or hover over something, and a contextual menu comes up. That's Ask AI. And Ask AI you can type it in with a free-form chatbot kind of thing, as well as you can ask, it allows you to do something specific. These are the most common tasks that folks have asked them to do. So, hey, I've highlighted this text. So the friction is quite high for you to kind of go to ChatGPT, type it up, and copy and paste it in your document, versus in Notion, you can just highlight it. Notion's been able to charge double, 2x. Notion without AI is $10 a month. Notion with AI is $20 a month. So it's early days. I'm sure it'll actually get normalized. But the high order bit here from a product design perspective is how easy it is to discover it just by highlighting it, and it's just there. That's in a very relevant manner, and how the most common tasks are highlighted and presented to the user. So the user doesn't need to do it. It actually intersects with what the user is already doing. So they don't need to do anything new. Many other products do it in a similar manner, but I think the way they've done it is quite elegant. GitHub Copilot, many engineering teams use it. Our teams love parts of it as well. I think the thing I really like about their modality is they make it exceptionally clear what is human versus what is generated by Copilot, and they require the end user. They give the agency. I think the beauty of this well-designed products is that they put a premium to human agency, and then they make a point where the final decision is with the end user. So here, the end user has to accept the code before it gets committed. It also tells, hey, this was written by AI or by Copilot. This is a UI on Alto. Alto is an AI platform for customizing sales demos, so enterprise software sales demos. So if you want to take your existing product and anonymize all names, so if you want to take your existing product and personalize it for a certain vertical, Alto is a browser plugin that helps you do that with one click. So this is one of our UIs where we actually recommend a bunch of personalization items, but the user has the agency to accept or reject what Alto has recommended. We tell them in a color-coded manner, hey, you have these fields, we have personalized them to these new values synthetically generated on the fly. You can apply them or you can reject them or you can regenerate them. Again, same model. We have in certain use cases, we have something we call magic mode where you press one button, it does everything. But if you don't like something, before pressing the magic mode, you can actually go click on that arrow and say, hey, I want the names to be changed in a certain way, or all the names should be mixed gender instead of a single gender, things like this. So you get the idea. So I want to spend a little more time on the next two slides. So this was all setting the stage. Any questions on Copilot before we go deeper into how to decide between the two? Yeah, go ahead, please.
Oh, one thing. You just raise your hand and we'll get a mic to you. Thanks.
So I was wondering how you would categorize I would say task to replacements where there really isn't any need for a human intervention, right? I run a startup in the 3D rendering space. And we're doing things where instead of rendering a product and waiting for the render to be completed, you're basically now having a generative AI model do that. What's the guidance there, and how would you categorize? It's almost effectively there is no UI, and the customer doesn't necessarily know what's going on in the background.
I mean, then it's just magic in a way. I think I think the modality and affordances come into play when there is a UI, when the human has to do it. What you described is that your software's outputs became much better. You described the magic mode as we have a small magic mode here as well, where I think the simplest analogy is improved writing on Notion AI, where you're writing something and automatically improves writing. So the 3D rendered model is already the best it could provide or it could generate. That's similar to Midjourney, for instance, and such. Does that resonate?
But basically, can I charge a premium for that? Or do you recommend interfaces still being more, user first, so you can actually still see that there is an AI component? Because my pricing reflects that, I'm charging you more for this.
Yeah, I think it's worth experimenting for sure. You can say, hey, look, there are these. You can watermark it and say there are these two things. You can the cheaper version and a better, more expensive version, and see how customers react. And it's a function of what resonates, the price elasticity of your target customers. Such, right? Dan, was there a question on Zoom or? And I think there's a question here. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks. This is I guess kind of a design-related question. You're illustrating some of the common design patterns, right, that we're seeing. And as AI, functionality is becoming more widespread and common, are you seeing some of those kind of become a default, kind of like something we should kind of keep track of, so that we're leaning into the right patterns, design patterns? And where would you recommend kind of keeping track of those?
Yes, I think there are new affordances that are getting somewhat kind of customers expect them in a way, both stylistically as well as from a micro interaction perspective. I think the paper planes, the chatbot text boxes, the magic wands are coming, the sprinkles, the pixie dust stars are coming from a stylistic perspective. And I have a few slides later on where I talk about, I think this is, again, I think the resurgence of defensive design. This is really all about, from a design it's about defensive design. Because there are, the title of the talk is usefully wrong. I think because these models are not so deterministic, there is a chance that the outputs are wrong. It may still be useful, it may get the user 80, 90% there, but it may not be 100% accurate. So as product builders and designers, I think the onus is up to us to tell the users that, hey, look, this may not be accurate, and inform them when it's not accurate, and if the system knows that, and let them access a fallback. The fallback could be ask a human. Fallback could be, hey, regenerate, as in ChatGPT's case, or regenerate and remix, or compare and contrast. Midjourney shows you 4 images, and you can pick amongst those 4. So I think a deeper answer to your question is, or a more abstract answer is that it's a resurgence of defensive design. Some of the fundamental first principles of defensive design are coming back, or becoming more relevant in this case, and we'll talk a bit about it as well. Does that resonate?
Awesome. Hey, Kintan, sorry for interrupting your flow. Oh, yeah. I just want to go back to that last question about Notion, for example, being able to charge twice as much. Now, yes, you'd presume that they're probably first to market, they're quick, but in due course, and not too long, maybe in a year or so, it becomes pretty natural for all providers to have something like this. So you're, in effect, I guess the question is, do you anticipate this being from a margin perspective, race to the bottom in a sense, and especially given that there is a marginal cost to support it. It's not free. How do you see the economics playing out? I know it's hard to predict from here, but will this be something that you have to do just to defend your turf, or will this allow for actual true growth? Yeah, and it's a little too early to speculate on that, but I mean, Microsoft has shared in their quarterly earnings that they expect in the 365 suite AI-generated Copilot products to have double the price in some products. So I think it's what I see the natural evolution or the industrial logic for the terminal state to be is from companies spending more money on software on certain aspect, and will be replaced from something else where certain tasks that were done by human professionals, I think they'll be done by software, and then the humans will do some other tasks that are more meaningful. For instance, if I could write a copy for a single ad today or 10 ads in a day, what if I could use AI to write hundreds of ad copies, and then my job as a professional is to really try and pick or discern the results and see. So I think the meaning of work or the output is kind of dramatically getting increased. It's like pre-computer, post-computer kind of situation, in my opinion, if that makes sense. And I say it in the most optimistic way. I think it's like we get to do a lot of interesting things, and as product builders, product managers. If we had to actually, if some of these product management tools were to work more efficiently, more effectively, then as product builders, we'll spend less time on product ops, more time on product building, being closer to the customer, being closer to the code, closer to the design, and so on. So it's really that. So I actually genuinely feel, when I've had a version of this conversation with some folks, there is a sense of pessimism as well, that hey, jobs will be lost and so on. I think not if we manage it appropriately. I think this actually unlocks us to do some very interesting jobs. So I'll leave it there, and happy to chat more, Prasad. Yeah. So it's a valid point. So coming back to the modalities, as we are building products, I think this is a simpler chart, and I have another one as well right after this to so what. But let me start here. The pros and cons. The trade-offs here are, chats are, they're deceptively simple looking. For the customer, for the end user, it's like, hey, I can just type in anything. But I say deceptively because most customers won't know what to type in. No, so it's more like to begin the experience, to kind of greet. As I was at the symphony the other day, they have this greeter and usher. So I think at the beginning in your product experience, at the beginning the greeter can be a chat, and then the usher can be the person who actually takes you to the actual seat, and so on, can be a co-pilot in a way. So the pros here are there's flexibility, natural language, there's zero learning curve, etc. But when I ask folks, especially I've asked folks in sales and marketing, I sensed a sense of trepidation that they don't know how to write good prompts, that they may be
leaving money on the table by not writing good prompts, because AI will only respond based on what it's been asked. So it's users don't like this paradox of choice, getting a lot more choices. So it's not as easy. Sometimes they'll ask, remember the old days of IVRs on, you call FedEx or American Airlines, and say you try to use your voice, it'll just not work because you have to do trial and error. It takes longer time to do that. Copilots, obviously it's contextual, so the applicability is very narrow. But it does that job with a higher degree of accuracy, higher degree of confidence and such. But it can only do one task. It can only do, when you hover a single line on Notion and say improve writing, it's not going to change the rest of the doc. It's only going to change that line and so on. So there's a fine balance between that. So depending on how confident you are about the use case or the job to be done by your end user, how confident is the user about the job to be done? Depending on at what stage in the product cycle, at what stage in the user's journey you are introducing AI, is what I'll use as determining this, the choice of chat versus Copilot. Obviously, there are hallucinations. AI, some of the AI models are smart enough to kind of give very, very true-looking data and very convincing data. So you need to parse it out and let the users make it easier for the users to parse it out as well. So this is a simpler version of the so what here is I've been asked this question many times that hey, I'm doing this, I'm building this product, or I have this product, I want to apply some GPT into this. What should I do? And I've always encouraged folks to look at it from three vectors. First is obviously how broad the job to be done is, how broad the task is. And when I say broad or narrow, it's how confident you are about this task, for instance. Oftentimes they may think it's a broad task, but in the end user's perspective, they use this product for a single task. So they may know that the end user may feel that the task is very simple. Like use again the example of Notion. You can do a million things with Notion, but if somebody is using it just for managing their specs, and for them the task is very narrow. So really understanding how confident are you as well as the user about the job to be done at hand. So that's the first one. And obviously, the narrower the job to be done is, Copilot is a better fit because it's task relevant, it's very pointed. Frequency. If something is repetitive, you don't want the user to keep asking the question over and over again that, hey, can you do this, can you do this? So for low frequency tasks, chat is a better modality in my opinion. Also familiarity. So if a customer, like if there is Notion has these great shortcuts. Because once you are familiar with keyboard shortcuts, once you're familiar with the product, you keep on going with the fastest possible, the path with the least friction. You don't want to have somebody type out the whole question over and over again. So the breadth or depth of the task, frequency of use, and familiarity of the product are the three vectors. I'm sure there are many others. Open to ideas if somebody in the audience has another vector to consider. Obviously, cost is another one as well. I think you can create copilots in a way where you can just reuse cache and such. So cost could be another one. There's a whole different talk we can have about how to benchmark models, how to, what's the trade-off between performance and accuracy and cost. There's a triumvirate of performance. So how fast, what's the latency, how accurate it is, and how much it's going to cost, more from a technical lens. And we can dive deeper if that's of interest as well. Happy to. Was there a question? Yeah.
So just curious on what kind of market research did you do before you got into Alto? Or what's the market space that you're addressing? In terms of
but that's different than this. This is more of a different. How did I so for
first one to the end.
No, this is a good question. It's an easy question. So we wanted to create something. We started at a broader range, like hey, we started with hey, how do you how do you make B2B software selling e-commerce grade? We're coming from Amazon, and say, hey, how do we make it easier to access product? How do you make it easier to access demos, compare, contrast, and such? And we realized in our conversations with revenue leaders that there was a even more immediate need of certain features and tool sets that we had in mind. So we thought, hey, let's start by offering those tool sets to the leaders for their internal usage first before building out something that's more buyer-centric. So it's really 300-400 conversations and just product management kung fu, over the years, basically. That was the truth, yeah. Cool. Anything else? Yeah, go ahead.
Thanks, Kintan. So I have a question, but before let me just narrate something. So I have read it that for ChatGPT, there was a question asked. And then the same user said, you know what, ChatGPT, I'm going to pay you $20 if you give me a more detailed answer. And then it got a bigger answer. And then the same user said, I'm going to give you $200, give me a detailed answer. So it got a huge detailed essay. So my question is, can we have like multiple models at the same time based on the user persona? It's going to hit multiple models and then give the answer based on that. Is there a possibility?
Yeah, and that's how most of the complex, more sophisticated software works today as well. Like in Alto, you can, to personalize a name, to create a synthetic name, use one model. To personalize some other piece of text, we'll use another model. Use regular expressions to just modify things like dates or some numbers and so on. So it is working like that today for the most part. Because you do not want to use an expensive, the triumvirate of cost, performance, and accuracy. You don't want to use a very expensive model to answer a simpler question. Vice versa. Does that make sense? And there are many orchestration platforms available in the market. LangChain helps you do parts of it. There are many other LLM ops products out in the market. Bedrock from AWS is a good one as well. It does pieces of it, not everything, but makes sense. All right. So when I say, I don't want to lead everyone to believe that you are either in camp chatbot or in camp copilot. No, these are like, remember the greeter and the usher analogy, where depending on where in your journey, in the user journey, you are offering this, you can offer different things. So typically I've seen that at the beginning, where a customer is just starting off with your product, can start with a broader end of the funnel, where broader chat-based experience to help the user ask or mention or indicate what they want to do, and then depending on what the user has indicated, you can go them to a task-relevant copilot driven experience, and you can kind of have a recursive version of that. Once they are in that experience, then you can get back to chat again. In Notion, they are doing both. There's actually there's a set of options as well as there's also a text box as well. So it's not an either or. I think it's up to us as product builders to decide what's more relevant, what's more efficient for my customer base, for my user at this step in the product's usage cycle. Does that make sense? Evolution is an obvious next question. I think generalized chat is going to start becoming more specialized chat models informed by specific enterprise-specific data or vertical-specific data for compliance-based industries versus different language-based models and such. Co-pilots are starting to become more autopilots. There are quite a few autopilots out there as well, where that's where your question was earlier as well, where some of the tasks, if you know that this is what the customer wants, you don't want to ask customer to kind of apply, say accept all the time. Say, hey, the customer has picked this 10 times out of the last 10 times, so when it's presented the 11th time, I'm going to just go do it for the customer as an autopilot. Does that make sense? So it's not binary. I'm going to go there. I want to talk a bit about defensive design. The term usefully wrong is quite powerful. And to his credit, I think Satya Nadella mentioned this at the launch of Copilot. And I think it's a very powerful word because the co-pilots And I think Microsoft has learned it over the years. When we look at one of the most common co-pilots, or one of the oldest co-pilots launched 25 years ago, was this thing called Clippy, launched in like Office 97 or so, I think. So that was more wrong than it was useful. So it kept on annoying users, and now I think there are much more powerful Copilot versions of this that are quite loved and used. But early versions, I think the concept was very powerful, it just wasn't delivering. So as we design products, it's up to us to kind of figure out where we draw the line. Obviously it needs to be more useful than it is wrong, but like you need to draw the line and see what's relevant for your industry, for your user. So defensive design is really, in the simplest level, is really all about setting expectations for the customer. And if a customer gets in an undesirable state in your product, then do three things. Tell them that they are in an undesirable state, so they know that they are. Tell them how they got there, and tell them how to get out of there. As simple as that. So the way you do that is really first set expectations that, hey, look, this may be so much accurate, and you can do that in onboarding stages. If it's a consumer product, you can do that, through nudges and such, or setting expectations, color coding, and whatnot. Offer fallbacks. So many products have all kinds of fallbacks, and the simplest fallback is, hey, let me try it again. Simplest, regenerate. That's what ChatGPT does. I think Google Bard has probably the most credible fallback of all time. It just says, okay, Bard didn't get it, ask Google. The biggest fallback is the ask Google button, and obviously it works. Include feedback loops. And feedback loops are, again, a very deep topic. Depending on, I'll just give you a flavor of what a feedback loop looks like. Feedback loop is essentially, you want to measure, as soon as you give a thumb up or thumb down, say, if you remember the old music apps, as soon as you do a thumbs down to a song, it's not going to continue playing. It'll just skip it right there. And then continue, because that's telling the user that, yes, I got it, that you don't like this song. I'm not going to let you suffer through the next 2.5 minutes of that song. So same applies here, where as soon as you give something a thumb down, you want to tell the user what you're doing about it. What are you going to do to act upon it? And some kind of indication that first acknowledge that, yes, we've heard it, and then do something immediately. Because if you give a thumbs down in the next iteration of auto-generated or AI-generated blurb of text is similar to that kind of is a trust buster. So you want to look into that. I think another feedback loop comes in terms of latency. So latency is essentially, between the time a customer asked to do something and when they got the message, how long does it take? Now it's different between co-pilots and chat. In chat, if you ask for something, say if you ask something to ChatGPT, the latency is measured between the customer pressing enter and the first letter being typed by ChatGPT. Even if it's typing a 2,000 letter answer, a 2,000 word answer, it's not when it ends typing, but it starts typing. In Copilots, it's the other. In Copilot, the latency is measured between when the customer asked, initiated the task, and when the entire task was done. Improved writing, and writing was improved. So I think there are nuances there in terms of feedback loops, and you want to test feedback loops in terms of customers' perception around performance, around accuracy, latency, and such. Yeah, go ahead. Rohan, there's a question behind you. Yeah.
You made an interesting point about trust busters and the feedback loops, right? So before you deploy, right, and you're trying to sort of test for accuracy, right? What are some ways that you would approach that pre-launch or pre-implementation so that you don't lose trust in case something has kind of gone wrong? Because I'm trying to sort of understand the scope and dimensions of testing just at a high level.
Yeah, I think it's a transient topic. I mean, I'd start the models you are using. I'll start with side-by-side testing of sorts, Coke, Pepsi test of sorts, for the known use cases. What is the factual use cases? What is the capital of USA, for instance? Start with a simple thing, and then see what's answering, where are you getting the right answers, and then you start increasing the ambiguity between two models. Then you also do simple things on There are benchmarks available for all the models you're using. Helm by Stanford is a good benchmark. There are a bunch of other benchmarks available. So I'll look at benchmarks to see along the dimensions that have sufficient capacity to matter, where does a certain model you're using is resting in. And the most importantly, assume that it's going to be wrong. So over-design, over-engineer for fallbacks. And so assume that every user will at least once encounter an undesirable state. So just want to make sure that that experience is killer for that user. Does that make sense? Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, I actually had a question for the feedback loop. So like you mentioned that it's for the specific user. If they do thumbs down, that thing will not be shown to them again. But what about the other users? Like if the answer was wrong by a certain chat, like this shouldn't be shown to other users as well. So.
Yeah, it's a weight you prove to every feedback. I think the weight is higher for the specific user, and it's also depending on the question and the query as well. To use a music example, if I did a thumbs down on a song, I asked to play happy music, and it starts playing Happy by Pharrell, and maybe I don't like it, for instance. Or actually the better example is play sad. Alexa, I'm sad. Play some music. Some people, when they are sad, wanna hear sad songs. Some people, when they are sad, wanna hear happy songs. It's a very true story. So in that case, you want to have the feedback applied to that user first, and then see, okay, in that instance, like if 100 people asked for play sad, I'm sad, play some music, what resonates a lot? Because then people are like, if somebody likes happy song when they are sad and you start playing a sad song, they'll skip right away. So feedback loops sometimes are very fast. So you want to triangulate a lot more data before informing that call. I think that it's the safest choice. What I have found is to start with that user for that instance. I think that what you found is, even for that user, the choice may differ tomorrow. So does it make sense? It's a very task-relevant question, so the answer may vary from use case to use case.
Thank you.
So in other words, okay. So in other words, each of these ML models that you develop, they had to cater to each individual sessions and profiles, right?
Yeah, you want to have a learning, like a feedback loop built in that kind of provides different weights in a recursive, like in a compounding manner, to see, like, okay, you added this weight, see if next time that encounters what happens, and if it doesn't happen that way, then you reduce the weight, and so on. So these are like self-learning systems.
Got it.
Makes sense. Okay. A few examples of some good examples of fallbacks I have seen. Obviously, I'm sure most folks have seen Midjourney or even Adobe Fireflies or so on. I think they, for images, unlike text, for images, I think human brains are trained to kind of quickly compare and contrast visual things. So they've decided to show 4 images right away, side by side. ChatGPT does not show 4 versions of the text that you ask for it, because it's just too hard to kind of consume as for the brain to process. But these guys do it, and for images it makes sense. Obviously, regenerate option. In most chatbots, there is a regenerate option. You'll see we have a version of it that's regenerate as well. Fallbacks of ask a human whenever there is a high-stake transaction happening, whether it's customer support or sale or early discovery transaction happening, ask a human. Oftentimes there's an option of fix it yourself. We do it all the time in Alto, where if you ask to change some text for a demo and Alto didn't get it right, but you know exactly what it is, we just say, why don't you just tap on it and type it up? Just fix it yourself. That can be, you don't need to kind of regenerate. If you know exactly what you want, the higher order way is to get the job done. So look for the fastest way to get that job done. Feedback loops, obviously, there are different ways to collect feedback loops. In text, there are all these shorter, longer, witty, casual, more authoritative. You can look at all different text editors and you'll see those. In images, the simple thumbs up, thumbs down are kind of the same. I think ChatGPT has three options: thumbs up, thumbs down, and kind of similar. Obviously, Google has these where it asks you to actually write. It gives you an option to write up if you want to describe how your feedback was, in addition to correct, complete, easy to understand. So depending on the context, they change the words. Instead of just having thumbs up, thumbs down, they change what the tags could be. So it helps with their tagging. Similar, I think the last product is an HR product. Super important to react quickly. Even if you don't have a high fidelity feedback loop, the trust gets built and compounded over time if you react quickly. If a user gives you feedback, you somehow acknowledge and react quickly, they'll give you more feedback, and they'll give you more feedback, and so on. And we are in the business of collecting feedback at this stage in the evolution of this tech. So I'd encourage you to do everything you can to collect more feedback and then use it immediately. Those are the prepared remarks. Let's have more conversations. Yes, Rohini, I think you have 2 questions here. And if there are any in the Zoom, happy to take them as well. Yeah.
Well, thanks for a great talk.
Yeah. Thank you.
As a product manager in general, which is my main profession, feedback loops are always very difficult because customers it's only like polar ends, either very happy or very unhappy. So how do you design machine learning in such a way that it's able to pick up the unsaid feedback?
It's the actions. Alexa, play music. We play a song, customer skips within 20 seconds, we give it thumbs down. Like unsaid, focus on what the customer does. Customer gives thumbs down but have still copied and pasted that blurb from ChatGPT. And if they've copied it, then yes, it'll actually count it as a higher weight. So focus more on the actions to the extent possible. I agree. I mean, typically most feedback is negative. Typically most feedback is polarizing. So I agree. I wouldn't focus too much on just the text or verbal feedback, but actually on the actions that they take. Yeah.
Hi. Thanks for the talk. I had a question on product strategy and incorporating AI. I think one of the great potentials of AI is it's fantastically powerful. I think one of the risks is that it can be very difficult to tame and very distracting. I imagine for many builders here that have incorporated AI, one of the challenges we faced, that I faced launching an AI product in my last company, was determining how much to invest in it and determining what the AI state is relative to the non-AI state and the incremental value that it could create. So I'm curious, kind of 2 questions. One, how are you measuring kind of those signals of value or incremental benefit versus the non-AI state or the many other approaches? To assess, like, yes, it's worth investing in AI. And then 2, how are you mitigating against overinvestment as this technology very quickly evolves, kind of avoiding that distraction solution first trap?
I think that I'll answer the second question first. Now, how do you right size the investment in AI? I think the good news is, unlike earlier, both the cost to try out some of these things. You can try out pretty much any open source model on Hugging Face's Inference Playground, for instance, using one of the inference endpoints, and then just see whether it's working or not and what's the value. Same for Playground on OpenAI, for instance. So I think the cost of experimentation has been lowered significantly to just try it out. But to your question as to hey, how is it really going to move the needle? The answer is it varies based on your use case. Maybe your heuristics-based approach or workflow is solid based on your knowledge, your understanding of the customer. So AI may not really move the needle at all, so I think it's a judgment call at the end. The way, some thinking points to think about it is, look at the most common tasks the user does in your workflow and see, hey, can any of these tasks be automated? Can any of these tasks be replaced using, those tasks could be either generation tasks or parsing tasks or predictive tasks, but see, can any of those be repeated? And if you see that users are doing the same task over and over again, I think there are easier ways to automate those tasks with AI now than in the past. Now, there are many examples where you can automate tasks through manual things as well. I'll give you a very real life example from 10 years ago. At Amazon, Amazon sells physical CDs and DVDs and vinyls and such. And also, when we were first launching streaming music service, Prime Music, one of the things when we observed customer patterns, everyone who bought a CD, the first thing, a music CD, like an audio CD, the first thing people did after the CD arrived in mail was to rip it. So that they can take the music with them on their iPods, or they can take it on the plane or on the hike or in the car or so on. And then they had the CD as well, but they also ripped it. iTunes was there, Amazon has Amazon MP3 at the time, and now Amazon Music, where you can buy songs for 99 cents. But people still bought CD because they wanted, their car had a CD player, they wanted a CD, but they also ripped it so that they can play it on iPod. We observed that pattern, and this is non-AI, I'm just making a point, where we thought, hey, if everyone is most people are doing this task consistently, predictably, let's automate that. So we spend an inordinate amount of resources to create something called auto rip. So what it did was, as soon as you buy the CD, before the CD arrives in mail, the song arrives in your digital library on Amazon Music app. And people loved it and so on, but it was automated. We didn't use AI, we didn't need to use AI, but that's from a product building 101, our first principles, I think that was the important part. So I'd also encourage you to just go to the fundamentals and say, hey, are there tasks that are being done over and over again by your users, by your customers? First, catalog those tasks, and then from those tasks, see if AI can help automate, replace, accelerate any of those tasks. If they cannot, then it's great. You don't need to use AI, right? Does that resonate?
It might be too early, but for Alto, are you seeing clear signals, evidence that the AI solutions, so personalized sales demos, is meaningfully improving the experience? Is it increasing?
We don't have a benchmark. We are AI native, AI first. So we started a few months ago. So I don't have a benchmark to compare. It's a hypothesis. The answer is no, because we don't have sufficient data. It's a hypothesis.
Yeah, that makes sense. And totally agree on the cost of experimentation as well. I think one of my experiences, though, there is, once an investment or thesis is made, it's it's a lot of effort and investment that's going into these products.
Yeah.
When we were doing research on our launch, talked to a lot of PMs at other companies, and it might be too early, but I will say traction for, call it V1 of many of these AI products at Con, at Notion as well, was quite low. And first-time adoption was low. Even more worrying was repeat adoption was very, very low. Off the record, but what I heard at Notion was the case, and I've seen similar examples. And so, I think that's one of the questions around everyone's kind of AI, and there are definitely instances where it's magic and it meaningfully creates value. But I think there's many instances as well where it's kind of meh. And so just frameworks for creating strategy and understanding around okay, here's where we should invest. Here's where maybe hey, just a simpler, dumber solution would work.
I think it's a very valid point, and that's why I've seen so many examples where it has been negative. And in many of those cases, when you look at the product, you kind of know that why it's negative. It's like a chatbot was snapped onto an existing UI dashboard. All dashboards got converted into a right panel with a chatbot, and it just didn't really serve. I think that's why I need to be thoughtfully intentional about why we are using some of these technologies and where in the product and if it makes sense. I think in terms of I think we are probably in a 100-mile journey. We are not even covered the first mile. So I think it's net. I think it's the time to value and the utility value of this technology. So I've been fortunate to be part of the mobile transition, on-prem to cloud transition, the browsers, a little bit of voice and AI in the last several years, and this. So from my personal vantage point, in each of those shifts, I've seen that the utility value of some of the outputs is much higher than some of the other transitions. And the time to value, when I say time to value, is you build something and how long does it take for you to realize whether it's working or not? It's very quickly. So if done right, the cost of experimentation can be very low. So you can do a lot more experiments until it works. And then time box it, obviously, and so on. So the strategy is to reduce the cost of experimentation and do more experiments until you find something that works. So it's a hand-wavy answer because I think we are at that stage in the evolution of the tech. Makes sense?
I would just real quickly chime in. I was an early Amazon Music user, and I remember auto rip.
Thank you.
One thing you left out, you went back and retroactively ripped stuff. So I had a CD that I bought like 10 years ago, and all of a sudden I'm like, whoa, why is Beastie Boys? What's that going on? All of a sudden it was like ripped in there. I was like, this is super cool. That was a delighter. That was really good. We have a question on Zoom. Anand, do you want to unmute?
Yep.
There we go. Go for it.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you good.
Sure. Thanks. Hey, Kintan. So I've been experimenting with generative AI and basically coupling it with RESTful API services. So what I do is get the data from RESTful APIs and add a twist basically by enhancing the values by using generative AI. So I wanted to I have two questions. One is, I don't know where technically it belongs. It's basically the chat portion, or basically it's the Copilot portion. I think you had an answer earlier. There is something in between. Probably the solution is something in between. What is your thought on that?
So just to understand the question, you have some RESTful APIs that you're enriching using Gen AI.
Correct.
And does that belong in? I mean, likely it seems like more in the Copilot bucket based on just that description, but it doesn't matter, to be honest. It doesn't matter where it belongs as long as you think it does the job in the best possible manner. My uninformed answer is that it's closer to the Copilot, just based on how RESTful APIs work, because they are quite intentional. A RESTful API does a specific task.
Correct. And just to add on to this, so the RESTful API essentially gets the information, and what I do is essentially add additional vectors, try to get more data in addition to what is being added from the RESTful API. I think looks like it's Copilot. And I also ran into a lot of challenges in terms of sometimes the ChatGPT kind of throwing out errors saying that it doesn't have an answer. And I think I had to learn the hard way, try a lot of prompt engineering using the APIs, which was a little bit of a challenge initially, but I think I was able to overcome and also change the version from GPT-4 to GPT 3.5. And it is starting to doing some wonders, and I think the performance is much better.
That's great. Yeah. 3.5 turbo is quite good for the types of tasks you're trying to do. I agree.
Thank you so much. Yep.
Thank you.
I think that's it done. Yep. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Anand. And other people on Zoom, you can raise your hand or just type it in chat.
This might be a tech stack question. I think we started looking at AI on and off for the last 2 years, and we quickly realized any use case we would pick up would quickly become commoditized because some off-the-shelf, model would do what we were trying to do in-house. So, any thoughts or just guidance on how to think about competitive advantage for a company it's our size, which is a startup, and what kind of platforms do you recommend hitching "quote unquote" our boat to, right, in the long run, so that we don't end up building things in-house that eventually become a commodity?
Yeah, I mean, competitive advantage is going to be, as I said in the very beginning, is going to be a function of obviously the product experience, the CX. How deeply ingrained are you in the customer's workflow, and how have you designed the product so that it intersects with the customer's existing human behavior as opposed to requiring them to learn new things, and the GTM motion, the go-to-market motion. It's going to be a combination of those. Don't know your market too well, but I think the competitive advantage is going to be from those two things as opposed to anything else, because the state-of-the-art models are accessible to everyone for pretty much similar prices and so on. If you're doing a little more compute-intensive task and say, hey, having access to the A100s or some GPUs may give you some time advantage, 3 to 6 months, but that's not a sustainable competitive advantage. I think the sustainable competitive advantage is how deeply ingrained you are in your customer's workflow, and how how repetitive the usage is, and that's determined by the inputs into those is the customer experience, and also GTM. Makes sense?
Yeah. Are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. The generative AI products or solutions for the enterprise world is quite challenging in my view. And more often, you won't get the customer data while training your models or even performance or tuning anything. So in that case, if you're building up an enterprise product with generative AI, how you take your idea from ideation to product to ideation to product market fit? What are the key challenges you faced or you've seen, and how do you handle it?
Yeah, I think 2 points. I think so the question is about in absence of access to proprietary data, how do you kind of experiment with an idea and bring it to market? 2 answers. One is, I think the bar has the amount of data you need has reduced significantly with the large language models. There is I'm not trivializing it. You still need it to kind of fine tune your models and such, but the amount of data you need has reduced. Second is, I think it's true for AI or non-AI products. I think for enterprise products, the best way is to partner with one or few design partner companies who basically co-sign you in the beginning to help you build and co-design the product for them. I think that's true for even non-AI product as well, right? And if you're building something fundamentally new, you want to work with those companies to really understand what their workflows are and so on. And you don't need too many. 1, 2 is sufficient, but you need those. And if you're unable to find those, I think that's a signal or input into your decision matrix of whether this idea is worth pursuing or not. I'd actually keep that as a gate. The ability to find design partners as a gate to figure out whether this idea is worth pursuing or not. If that makes sense.
All right, we got a question from Zoom. Their mic's not working, so I'll ask for it. Related to the previous answer, how do you manage your AI assistant copilot development for your product to avoid the sad fate of Microsoft Clippy?
I mean, simple tongue-in-cheek answer is be more useful than wrong, but I think it's really the feedback loops, like really measure, very obsessively measure, is it really being helpful or not, and or useful or not. Even if it's not 100% useful, if it's deriving utility value, if your customers are deriving some utility from it, it's a good sign, and asking customers for it. I mean, it's really that. And Microsoft did that. I used to work on Microsoft Office at the times I can actually speak about these things in light. But I think the teams did take that feedback in the time. Yeah.
Great. We got another from Zoom. Sajid, are you there? Can you ask your question?
Yes, I'm here.
Great. We can hear you. Great. Go for it.
Great. Yeah, thanks, Kiran. This was a really helpful presentation. My question is for PMs who are transitioning into the world of generative AI. How would you offer guidance in terms of how they should think about shipping quality? What does an MVP look like, especially from the considerations of testing and safety? Because the answers can vary. So if there's any analogies or any learnings that you can share that you've seen in the world of generative AI, that will be really helpful.
I think obviously benchmarking is going to be helpful. So having your own benchmark, as I said, for known answer set, like a golden answer set or golden output set for what your product does, as well as benchmarking with publicly available benchmarks like I alluded to Stanford Helm, and there are a few others. I'm just using that as one example. There are also tools, AI observability tools. Fiddler is one, and Fiddler.ai is a good one. There are a few others as well that are good that I'll use. I think from a broader product management perspective, I think it's not too different from building any product. It's just you just want to make sure that you're following the first principles. The feedback loops are faster. The cost of experimentation is lower, so the number of experiments is higher. So you just need to take those things into account. And also this is an evolving field, so hang out in all the online Discord groups and forums and Twitter and whatnot to learn how others are doing events like this, obviously. And use other products, as many as possible, to see, because all these products are just like a laboratory where people are still experimenting to see, what, like ask those questions, ping the builders of those products to say, hey, what makes it work? How might it work differently? What was the second best idea that you decided not to pick? Why? I'd really have approached this exciting journey of transition into a Gen AI PM with a relentless pursuit of curiosity.
Thank you.
Yeah, go ahead.
So can you comment on your, piggybacking on his question, your tech stack? If you can just give a very high-level overview, but what kind of foundational models are you using? Are you using any of the Hugging Face or AWS or any?
Yes, task relevant. Depends on what you want to build. I think it's a function of what you want to build. Where if you want to use images, there are some good stable diffusion models. Do numbers, there are some models. Basic stack is you can use Azure, GCP, or AWS. Have a model and have a orchestration platform on top. Use some compute. AWS has A100s. Obviously use open source models through Hugging Face. You can host them, self-host them. There are simpler ways to do it. There used to be vector databases that are specific, but now all the major databases have vector database available as a feature. So I think there's not a lot more there to be done.
Yeah, I just probably want to get a little more insights into your overall development cycle, the product aside. Like how do you go about gathering the data, and then all data is perhaps not available. How do you go around manufacturing? So the foundational model, and then the layer on top of it. What kind of compute resources and everything?
Yeah.
Where's the biggest leak or the
biggest leak in terms of?
No, not leak, but where's the biggest resource consumption while you're building these models, putting these models together?
I think at the inception is to put the framework together, and after that it's in fine tuning. Basically, it's like fine tune the models and have this feedback, increase the velocity of implementing the feedback loops. So that's where your RLHF or RAG, whatever you're using, I think comes into play. But at the inception, it's all about like putting together the models and seeing like what model, if you have multiple tasks that your product does, then which model to use for what. I think that's where a little bit of experimentation goes in. And these things change so rapidly. You want to have a orchestration layer so you can swap out things very easily. Makes sense. Prasad, did you have one?
Yeah, I'll do Zoom. Why don't we do like two more, and then we can break, and then we can do questions. So the one online which says, do you use generative AI for other functions in-house to help on your company, such as sales and marketing? What are the most valuable tools you use? Do you build your own?
I don't build. We don't build our own, but now we use Copilot, GitHub Copilot. I think it's good to kind of not do just generally all coding, but it's really good to do quick prototypes, or if you're typing something in one language and want to try something out in TypeScript versus Python, you can quickly do those things. ChatGPT for all kinds of things. Use some tools, Alto obviously for our own demos, but that's about it. Notion, yes, as I said. There are so many good tools available. I'm probably not the best when it comes to tools. I'm happy to share lists of this. I probably have lists for all top lists. I personally use these tools primarily. I've tried probably 100+ tools by now, but I don't use them on a daily basis.
We just take these last two questions, and then we'll break, and people can still ask questions, right?
Yeah. Kintan, I wanted to go back to a couple of questions ago. The lady asked about PM transition.
Yes.
And you said, and I agree with your general principle that product management is product management. It shouldn't really shift that much. But what I've practically observed though is that people do get they're used to building deterministic products that they know will behave in a certain way, and now you're moving to a probabilistic world. And I've noticed that PMs, actually probably senior PMs who've been around for a while, will sometimes struggle with sort of like, how do they define success? What do I do versus what does the data scientist do? A lot of throwing things over the wall, and general discomfort with, especially as you increase the temperature and generative component becomes larger, they get a little bit uncomfortable about all this. So What's your recommendation as leaders? So part of it is what they should do, like you said, learn more about, attend these kinds of sessions. But as leaders, how do we help walk them to this new land, if you will, and what can we do to ease that path? Because I think a fair number of people are quite in that, sort of not uncanny valley, but that middle state right now.
It's very natural. I think they're at a strategic level, lots of things can do, right? Strategic level, you want to have a culture of thinking in bets, thinking in terms of experimentation. I think the job of a PM is to define all the experiments as well as determining which should be the first experiment, which should be the first, like defining the experiments and the order of experimentation, as opposed to reducing the cost of experiments, and then how to incorporate feedback loops, etc. Lots of things can do on a tactical basis, where in terms of even just vocabulary, nomenclature, language, like some of the things we used to ask PMs about, hey, how sure are we about it? Like, instead of saying, are you sure, say, how sure are we about it? Like, simple things like those, or how likely is it that customers are going to like talking in terms of probabilistic statements, it helps, because then once people start thinking in terms of that look, things are not binary, things can be they're on a spectrum of probabilities. I think that kind of changes the mindset, and tolerating, obviously from a culture perspective, experiments fail, tolerating those and such. Happy to chat more, obviously. Yes.
I have one question kind of related to that, about the categorization of the models and the evolution, because what I'm thinking about quite a bit is how to avoid single point solutions across an enterprise, right, for specific tasks, and thinking also about more enterprise level capabilities that can power a lot of use cases. So do you think that it's still helpful to, we now have like multimodal, right? Everything's about Gen AI now, but what about the predictive models? How do you go about thinking of good ways to match use case against models and think forward versus getting stuck in those point solutions?
And it's not an either or. I think the answer to that question is that it's not an either or. It can be a mix and match, and that the key is constantly testing what works more for which user or for which use case. I think obviously predictive models are super helpful and are here to stay, and they'll become even better. So the idea is to really figure out how can being good at one make you better at the other. So which tasks in the broader Mammoth app, for instance, are more suitable to predictive models, more suitable to heuristics. Doesn't even have to be AI model, just heuristics, versus where we can expect to do some more experimentation. There are accounting apps where there are numbers, some of these new large language models are not as good with numbers. So they'll throw out numbers they sound right, but they're not right. So if you're building an accounting app, for instance, or we are Intuit, so I thought I'll use that example where there are aspects where you may not want to use large language model. You may only want to use it at guiding the user through the journey, and when it actually comes to calculating somebody's taxes or whatnot, I think you want to use heuristics and the engine behind that. So it's not a binary answer. It's a short answer. That makes sense.
All right, great. Well, let's wrap it up here. It's almost 8 o'clock. You can stick around, ask questions of Kintan, and talk with people. Please join me, and we'll give Kintan a warm welcome. Thank you. Round of applause. Thank you very much, Kintan.
I just got a couple.